Welcome to the Noodle podcast. We are Kate and Max, and we love noodling on what we've learned by accident. This podcast is a space where we share how we get the best out of ourselves and the people we've worked with. In today's episode, we talk about why do people behave badly? What's going on really? How can we build our insight, curiosity and understanding even when people are pushing our buttons? And do you know when you might be behaving badly and impacting others? So welcome back to Kate and Max. We are Noodle, and this is the Accidental Manager podcast series. And this is number 3 in our podcasts. This one, Max, is on the topic of
badly behaved people aren't
necessarily
bad.
So let's talk about what happens when there's bad behaviour shows up in a work environment. What might be going on there? What are some of the models that we know help to explain that?
So I think, where do we start with that? I think we start with the fact that as soon as somebody's behaving badly, it's very easy for all of us to jump to judgment.
And what do we mean by behaving badly? What sorts of things might you see?
So you might see somebody being particularly picky or particularly awkward or maybe quiet, might be overreacting to things. It's that sort of feel a little bit like I'm reading the back of a prescription packet, you know, that sort of the whole set of possible things it could be. Underreact, overreact, that sort of thing. I guess not what you're expecting. That's the thing, not what you're expecting, and something that confuses you around, okay, this other person isn't where I am. Yeah.
Or there's something that goes on in you where you feel, I don't understand why are they being like that? Is it me? Did I invite this? I wouldn't have done that, but they're more senior than me, so maybe that's okay. We've seen some bad behaviours.
Oh, yes.
We've been around the block.
We have seen some bad behaviours. Some of them definitely not good for, retelling, because there's too many expletives involved. But yes,
exactly.
That sort of stuff.
Exactly. But what's interesting to think about is, why are those people doing that? Maybe they've created a reputation or got to a certain level where they've always done it this way, or they've seen other people behaving like that. So that's what we do. That's what we do when we're like that.
I think it's acceptable.
Yeah.
But I think there's this idea that it's everybody else that behaves badly, and I don't. I mean, you clearly never behave badly.
Never. And neither do you.
No, not at all.
It's like that phrase, we all think we're a good driver.
Yes.
Or the majority of people think they're more intelligent than everybody else, which can't be if you've got the law of averages. We do have typically we have a bias that we're doing things better than other people.
Yes. Having
said that, actually, some people can go into behaviours that are either extreme or just really unhelpful. We've talked about this before, haven't we, around blind spots?
Yeah.
But should we talk a little bit about what's going on if somebody is being overly controlling, for example, or hugely picky, or just very negative about what they're seeing or being expected to do?
So I think there's a sense when people are in that space where they're operating in a way that starts to sort of cause a bit of friction or tension, is that they're worried about something, or they're fearful about something, or distracted. And it may be about work, or it might even be about something outside of work that is starting to have an impact on them in the workplace.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily always have to understand everything that's going on for someone. You just have to notice the bad behaviour, as in it feels bad maybe being on the receiving end of it. But again, a bit like our being curious thing that we talked about on a previous podcast, is to be in that space of just stepping back a little bit and just noticing the behaviour and thinking to yourself, wonder what's going on for that person that means that they think it's okay to drive like that. Because that's what we're saying, isn't it?
Cut me up.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yes. So being curious helps. Not easy if you're on the receiving end of somebody who, I don't know, maybe they're yelling, or maybe they're just telling you you've done a terrible job and they've forgotten to soften that a little bit.
That makes me think of, I use the analogy a lot, I'm sure you've heard me use it, which is for those of you that have seen The Matrix, where Neo, I know The Matrix is a few years old now, but where Neo is learning his skills. And at one point, somebody's shooting lots of bullets at him. And he seems to go into slow-mo where he sort of starts going, woo, and moving backwards. And he can see every bullet coming towards him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you want people to do when they're experiencing bad behaviour, is to see that behaviour coming and somehow just slow down time and go, that's interesting, it's coming, and maybe catch it and leave it in the air and just go, oh, look at that.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, but I don't think it's the right to dodge every single bullet.
Yeah.
So in order to connect well with people, we have to be able to have a level of, I'm noticing this is happening.
Yeah.
Can I just check? Is there something I could be doing differently? Or can we have a conversation? Or did you know that when you yell at people when they cry, we're not doing our best work? What else is going on here? So just even in allowing that space, opening the door and going, what is behind the door? Instead of going, I don't like it, it's too scary, slam it shut.
That reminds me of one of the games that we play on our workshops, the line-up game.
Oh, yes.
The bad day behaviour thing.
Yeah. Describe that.
So have a group of people. You need at least 6, I think, otherwise it gets a bit weird because there's not enough of you, but at least 6, and you have 2 lines of people facing one another. And the idea is that I'm going to tell you that if I'm having a bad day, what I'm experiencing in my body and what that might look like on the outside, or how you might experience me. So, for example, when I'm having a bad day, my voice starts to get a bit flat. I don't get so much up and downy. In fact, I probably don't make as much eye contact. My body's not, I'm not quite, I'm normally a bit. So I would describe myself and then you would do the same back.
Okay. So on a bad day,
yeah,
what you might get from me is me being terse, maybe quite clipped, very direct. What I need from you is, and probably not listening. I'm in project mode.
So the idea behind the game is that you then rotate round. So you move along a line and rotate the line round. So we keep having these conversations with one another. And the idea here is to sort of recognise in yourself, what is it that I do? But as you talk to somebody else, I think, yes, there's probably times when I'm terse too. Or do you remember that time I told you that somebody told me, yes, when I'm stressed, my left ear gets really hot.
Which is very specific.
It was very specific and somewhat strange. I was like, what? So what happens when the right ear goes? But we experience it in lots of different places in our body. Yeah. And it might be that we feel sick, or we feel we've got a tight throat, or shoulders go.
Yeah.
So there's
hot.
Yep. So there's a bodily sensation, but then that then starts to appear in behaviours. So there's like can you notice it in yourself? And then what happens when you start acting it out on other people?
Yes.
Because if you can notice it in yourself, then you can also start to observe it in others and think, oh, hang on a minute. This is not the Kate I normally see.
Yes, that's right.
What's going on?
And that's where the title of this podcast comes into play. I don't mean to come across in a way that's unhelpful to you or me. So I'm not necessarily a bad person just because I've started going into machine gun firing of things I need you to be doing or knowing and speed up. I don't think I'm a bad person. I think we're under stress, we've got stuff that needs to be done, I haven't got time to explain everything. It's coming from a good place of intent. So that again is where it's good just to go, what are they really trying to do here? Why are they operating like that? There's something good behind that. So people who are good with people sometimes take on far too much work and they get very, very stressed, but they'll hide it and it'll bubble up in different ways because they're trying to protect the people around them. I don't want you to fall over with the stress of the amount of work that you've got to do. I'll keep it, or I'll do it, or I'll protect you. Actually, no one's really benefiting from that, but it comes from a good place. It just means somebody's going to end up breaking at some point, and you don't want that. Nobody wants that.
So what you're talking about there is one of our favourite psychometrics that we use, which is Lumina, and the idea of an overextended behaviour, which is recognising that something that's your greatest strength has a bad day behaviour. So
a lot of it comes from Jungian theory. If anyone's interested in going way back when, that overextension of what could be a strength but tips into something not so good. when you're stressed.
Absolutely. So something like competitive can turn into something that's quite aggressive. Now, competitive behaviour is good. You want to drive great behaviours, sort of, improve performance, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then on a bad day, maybe be a bit argumentative, not particularly helpful for the people around you.
Yeah.
And this is where I wish we had that superpower. And certainly I've experienced it recently, where you notice people having conversations and it's like they're speaking Swahili, or one speaking Swahili and one speaking some completely different language.
Yeah.
And actually what you want to be able to do is turn the noise down on that and just see the subtitles.
What's really being said here?
Because what's really usually being said is, I'm a bit confused, or I'm a bit scared, or I don't understand you, or I'm worried.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is you want to be able to do is go, okay, so what's going on underneath?
Yes.
That means that this behaviour on the surface isn't really saying what needs to be
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. And at that point, it's not necessarily about the individual. Sometimes it's about what's going on between people, or not being said.
Yeah.
That's really key. So I think something around, okay, let's say you're constantly late to meetings.
Me?
Oh,
No.
often.
Really?
And I'm a timekeeper. You're a time bender. But it might be because you're being very ambitious and wanting to get a lot of things done, and you think you can get all of those things done. But what I see is somebody who's constantly tardy, Max, and also, in a way, disrespecting my time. I've turned up on time. I've stopped doing something else. So this is not okay. So maybe we don't even talk about the fact that you've been late, but I've got that going on in my head. You don't respect me. You think your time's more important than mine. I'm making more of an effort here than you are. So that subtitling goes on. But in team meetings, sometimes you can say, this person over here is always the one. You can rely on them to be the negative Nelly.
Yes.
They're going to be the one that's risk averse, or that'll never work because... And you've seen a lot of times, haven't you, where, okay, you can take negative Nelly out of the team meeting, but what happens?
Well, it comes back, doesn't it? But to somebody else. So I think that's the fascinating thing about group behaviours and group dynamics, and stuff that we came to more recently, actually, I'd say. So yes, we knew about badly behaved people before, but that sense that actually it's something the group or the team aren't talking about. So it's manifesting itself with one particular individual whose circumstances would mean that they're almost like the pressure valve, the bit where the steam's coming out of the system, and everyone's pointing at that particular person and saying they're a problem. But actually, quite often, particularly in teams, it's just where the pressure is coming out of the system, where they're the person prepared to voice what needs to be said, but everybody's doing the la la la, let's not talk about it things.
So you take those out,
comes back somewhere else.
Yeah, another person suddenly takes that role of being
Pops back
negative
up.
Nelly. Yeah, because it needs to be addressed. So again, that's really useful. If you keep on seeing repeated bad behaviour, or something that's, I wish that wasn't happening, what's going on again, then it's worth slowing down, doing the Neo moment of, there's a nugget in here somewhere. And what is really going on? What's unsaid and what needs to be addressed? Which takes a bit of bravery, doesn't it, to do that?
And that's not to apologise for the fact that it still hurts being on the receiving end of some of those behaviours, or it's frustrating, or it's difficult. Yes. And here's the thing there, is to really notice the difference.
So much of this comes down to communication, doesn't it? Communication up front. Here's what I'm thinking, or here's what I'm expecting. How about you? And then really listening to the answer. So you are contracting for a conversation or a situation. But also then noticing where that communication might have broken down, or there's miscommunication, is another source of why some people might be behaving in a certain way, and you just don't understand why that is. But actually, that's the brief they've been given. They think it is their job to make sure nothing goes wrong, whereas your job is to get everything done on time. And that sometimes means letting some things go. And it's not always necessarily people behaving badly because they're bad.
No. I always like to have that sort of thing in my head, which is everything that's been sent is sent with positive intent. So even if it lands badly, rewind back, as you say, that person, whether it's me or whether it's somebody else, was positively intended. So how do you help the conversation so that people can work out what should really be happening here and what's meant to happen?
Yeah. Fascinating stuff.
Oh, yes. So we've got a few noodles that we've worked on that help to explore some of this stuff. I know the ladder of inference is one that we'll be able to tap into. The scarf model that we've mentioned before from David Rock. And Johari's window, as ever, your blind spot and other people's, and how to give feedback so that people can really understand.
Yes.
We've
got quite a lot around feedback. I think one of the things you mentioned there was sort of that framing. How do you even get into, are you ready to know that this is what's happening, and I'm wanting to share this with you because I want the best from you. So framing's another good one.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so are we done today?
I think we are done for today. Badly behaved people aren't necessarily bad. Sometimes they are. But it's not me.
Never.
No.
Nor me neither.
So if you want to know more on this and have a think about, is it you or is it them, then find out more from theaccidentalmanager.co.uk or share your thoughts, your ideas. We're on Insta as noodle_space, word space.
And I suspect you may have already signed up for our podcast, but if you haven't, please do. And it's been Kate and Max.
And we are Noodle.
Thank you very much for joining us today. We'd love to know what you think and any experiences that you have that you're happy to share. Please leave a message for us on www.noodle.space. Don't forget to subscribe, share and leave us a review. We'll see you next time.